So, we got a couple things that arrived earlier, and of course, today's package full of new stuff. So, let's just do these in order. First up, we have the Blu-ray version of Little Busters. You may recall the DVD version arrived last week. And this one's already open because, of course, I started watching it. Stuff that's been here, you know, that's something that sometimes can happen. Then the Blu-ray version of Arcana Famiglia also arrived. Always good to know. This plastic. I don't remember what the insides of the DVD versions look like, which is kind of silly for me to say considering they're just like 5 feet behind me. Probably not even that far. But here we go, the Blu-ray versions of these two, and then we got everything that was in the packaging. First up, we got One Piece Season 5 Voyage 4. And of course, we're going to take a look inside the packaging, even though for One Piece Seasons 3 on, I think, they haven't been all that notable, but no better to be thorough than not. And we know from a couple of releases ago that they're labeled discs 1 and 2 there, as you would expect. This seems to be different artwork. I think they haven't been doing... So we got seasons 1 and 2, or discs 1 and 2. Next up, we got Pokemon Genesect and the Legend Awakened. So this would be the latest Pokemon movie with, is that Mewtwo's Mega Evolution, or is that something else? And then, of course, Genesect, and I don't remember the details. Includes bonus Pokemon trading card. Myth meets legend. So, who's that Pokemon card? You know what? I can barely see, but it's according to... Sorry. As you can see, it says Genesect. Or is that Genesect? Then we've got this, whatever that means. Toys R Us honors the most celebrated Pokemon. So in Toys R Us stores we got interesting little figures. More there. And we've got the DVD. Next up we have Girls und Panzer. I don't want to try and pronounce it exactly as I'd read it, because I do believe it's supposed to be German, but to be honest, I've never really taken a German course. Most I can say I know is Gesundheit, and that's kind of silly. Oh, maybe a couple of other things come to mind, but some of those I don't really want to say on the internet. Mostly because they kind of reveal what my last name is. So we got our DVD version. And I got the impression this was a generally well-received anime. And the Blu-ray version, now that's interesting. Disc 2 here doesn't want to rotate. But I kind of want to take a look at these because this is an interesting way of doing it. We can see that disc 1 there appears to have the combination of discs 1 and 3's art on it, whereas disc 2 is the same for both. That's kind of interesting. And finally we've got Aquarion Evol. So it's been a long time since I've watched Aquarion. It's a good question of how much I actually remember. And I do believe this is only set 1. Part 1. It might be good if I could double check whether or not I missed Part 2 being released at the same time, since sometimes Funimation does that. But it doesn't really need to happen in the middle of this video. We'll figure out next week if I missed it. We've got our insert taking the place of Part 2 when I eventually get that, and then we've got discs 1 and 2 DVD. So these are the 2 DVD discs. This is Blu-ray and Blu-ray. Only region A. So, there we go. That's all of this week's anime. There we go. Pretty good haul this week, I'd say. Definitely looking forward to maybe most of it, actually. They're all things I'm very curious about. But now comes to the part where I talk about what all I've watched, and it's been a complicated week. I mean, because after all, Thanksgiving did happen. And, well, maybe there's questions about what I would do. The truth of the matter is I did plenty of cooking. I mean, I did cook 3 pounds of turkey, 4.5 pounds of potatoes, 16 biscuits, 2 pumpkin pies. And I brought those up to the family house and contributed to the meal there. So I did a good amount of cooking on Thanksgiving itself. I had company Wednesday night and Thursday. Since Thursday everybody was getting together and Monster Hunter was going to be going on, I decided I wanted to focus on obtaining a Brachpallium, which is a part from a Brachydios, which you need to either construct the Brachydios armor or to fully upgrade your slime weapon. And, well, I wanted to fully upgrade my slime weapon before going over there. I mean, only one of them's G rank anyways, so a G rank level weapon used to help low and high rank people is pretty much making things even easier for me. Now, that's kind of relevant to the whole missing anime thing because, you know, gets over, Super Mario 3D World also arrived last week, and so a lot of Monster Hunter and Super Mario 3D World have been played. So for the Mario game, I'm sure some people would be curious, and I've actually found it to be pretty fun. Maybe somewhere between... Well, okay, it's my... based on an offhand comment on Reddit, I get the impression that there's maybe at least 2 teams working on Mario games. Probably more, but for the Mario platformers, you would have the team working on the new Super Mario Brothers games, and then maybe the team working on the Mario Galaxy games, who I think went on to make Super Mario 3D World. And it's kind of interesting because with new Super Mario Brothers, the games are fun and good, and the controls kind of control maybe sort of like the first Mario game in terms of you can really feel the momentum of your character, whereas with something like Mario Galaxy, it plays more like Mario 64, maybe even Super Mario World, where you kind of feel like the controls are meant to be tighter, i.e. Somewhat more responsive, I guess. Like, you don't feel like your character really accelerates to get up to a speed, except, of course, with the fact that Super Mario 3D World does have a run that kicks in after you're running for a little bit. But overall, what I'm trying to say is that Super Mario 3D World is... it feels like it's not as stressful getting into it and playing it, and it's been fun. There's been levels that have scared me and then turned out to be amusing instead. And then, of course, playing in the cat suit is absolutely fun. Bringing back Peach as a playable character bring me back to my Super Mario Brothers 2 days, and so I'm playing as Peach all the time because I like the... in this case, the hover is only very slight, definitely not Super Mario Brothers 2 levels, but it's still kind of comforting, nice to know. It's what I kind of got. It's something I like, I guess. I don't know. But I'm not done with the game. I'm doing a really good job of getting all the stars and stamps as I go along, but unfortunately, since my video capture stuff doesn't work and I don't even have HDMI video capturing here, maybe I'll need to start setting that sort of stuff up. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to record and upload videos of that. Maybe in the future. But, yeah, and then for Monster Hunter, a lot of monster hunting happens, because after I got that sword, I knew that I could progress in G rank without going online, which is something I've been more or less avoiding. I made an exception for the Brack Pallium, and I've made exceptions when I've played with friends, but outside of that, I've felt like I like the idea of making progress in that game without stuff, and since I've proven to myself that I can get back into doing the G rank stuff, and it's actually pretty manageable, that pretty much means that after this Brack Sword and Thanksgiving, I'm like, alright, I can see a roadmap on how to get from where I was to fighting Ivory Log-Yacrus, and once I do that, I can get the G rank Ivory Log-Yacrus set, which was a set I knew I wanted, because a lot of G rank sets tend to do different things from their high rank versions, and the Ivory Log-Yacrus high rank set was one that it's pretty much my go-to set unless I have some other specific need to go to. The G rank version was basically just a better version of the high rank one, and I liked that because I knew how I would use it and all that stuff. So I managed to put that together, and while doing that, of course, playing a lot of Super Mario 3D World, so that's where most of my weekend went. While I'm doing those sorts of things, fighting monsters by myself in G-Rank and playing a Mario platformer, I kind of don't want to be too distracted by those that I miss a valuable anime that I'm watching. So that's why, even though I've watched 4 things, it's a bit on the weaker side. For starters, I watched Wolf Children. That was a much higher priority thing, because I've been quite curious about it. And of the guy's 2 previous works, I really loved The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and I really hated Summer Wars, but Summer Wars just got onto a couple of specific nerves and lacked what it needed to pull it out of that and give me something else to latch onto, I guess. So, how did Wolf Children pan out? That one was actually pretty good. I mean, something about it didn't wow me as much as I would have thought that a lot of people talking about it would, but I think it's because no, it's not even, I wouldn't know what to expect. It's just, I guess nothing about it necessarily felt special so much as the whole thing was just neat the whole way through. And that's an actual rather pleasant experience, and it's very thought-provoking instead of very wowing, I guess. Whereas Girl Who Leapt Through Time kind of wowed me, I think. I don't know, but basically it means that I really enjoyed Wolf Children. I wouldn't mind watching it again. And if you're like me and you liked Girl Who Leapt Through Time but hated Summer Wars, well, you might find Wolf Children to be kind of similar, where it's like, maybe it's not going to replace Girl Who Leapt Through Time in terms of, maybe you won't like it more than that. Maybe you'll actually like it more than that. I don't know. But the kind of problems you might have seen with Summer Wars, you know, I don't think there's as big of a deal with Wolf Children. Wolf Children kind of, for some of the things I would have nitpicked about in Summer Wars, like 1 or 2 little things that are also present in Girl Who Leapt Through Time and Wolf Children. You know, Girl Who Leapt Through Time, it's all about the important thing about that element in Girlhood Up Through Time is basically how it doesn't... It's kind of the moral of the story, whereas Summer Wars is just the, oh yeah, these people are doing this and let's just forget about it. Everybody's going to be fun and happy and not learn anything from this. And Wolf Children is really all about everybody kind of learning this stuff, but not about it being necessarily disastrous so much as just kind of very heartwarming, sort of. Although talking about the details, I'm not sure. I think I'm kind of babbling there. So the other things was, after that I decided to play a little catch-up, so I watched the High School of the Dead OVA, and it was about as meh as I thought it might be. It's no surprise, it's more of a fan service episode, and given that the series itself was already pretty fan service, usually the fan service episodes of a fan service anime tend to be not as spectacular because, you know, usually if they're pretty notable, they have some sort of interesting story elements to it. And High School of the Dead always did. I thought the way it treated its zombie apocalypse was pretty good, even if some people thought the fan service was a little overboard. I didn't mind that too much simply because action was also a little overboard, and you know, some of the fan servicey stuff actually brings up relevant things that people kind of like to miss out of. People don't like to mention. Sort of like how 24 kind of doesn't show you the main characters needing to take potty breaks or something like that. Now, I don't know if that's actually the case since I've never watched 24, but you know, it's kind of that example of sometimes you can look at a story and think that there's a human element that can be missing that it's really easy to overlook. And with High School of the Dead and the fan service stuff in particular, I mean, the thing that came to mind was the one where they were at the school nurse's friend's office. I think she was a school nurse. The school nurse's friend's apartment. And I think that one's a really good example of something where it's not unusual for a zombie apocalypse anime to treat, or rather any apocalypse, sorry, it's not unusual for any zombie apocalypse story to kind of treat the situation where, you know, people get low on resources and start to feel desperate, and some people try and take advantage of people, but they kind of miss the flip side where these people have been through so much stress that the release afterwards kind of causes them to lower their guard, so to speak. Like, at some level, you could feel like maybe they're giving up on things going back to normal, and that's why I find parts like that interesting. And even outside of that sort of thing, usually when High School of the Dead does some sort of fan service section, and you know, it's after it's, oh, by the way, this, well, it's more like, these are what the zombies are doing, oh, by the way, here's the fan service that's currently going on with the main characters. So, to a degree, High School of the Dead takes the zombie stuff seriously. It has a lot of fan service in there, and so that's, I think, what makes High School of the Dead respectable, and why you wouldn't expect a single OVA to really be all that notable, because they can't really do a whole lot in there, so instead they're just playing around, and that's to be expected. I mean, it was a bonus episode created to go along with one of the volumes of the manga in Japan, I believe. Well, yeah, obviously, because it didn't get released here until last week. So it's a long way of saying that, you know, go into it expecting it to not necessarily be that good, and yeah, it's not necessarily that good, but it's not necessarily that bad. It's about what you'd expect of a fan service episode in a fan service series. So, along similar lines, I know that back on Halloween I tried to watch Elfenlied. Part of the intention of that was just having an excuse to watch the Blu-ray version, and also an excuse to watch the OVA episode, which I had never seen before. It was not part of the original DVD release. I downloaded it, but yeah. So, that one's, I'm not sure what I think about it as much. It's a bit stranger. It reveals some interesting information about characters that the series itself didn't. For example, we kind of know from the series what happened in Lucy's early childhood, and we knew she was imprisoned at the facility I call it imprisoned, but only because it seems like there might have been more to the facility than just the imprisonment. So it might be appropriate to call it something else. But basically, you never saw kind of like any of the history in between that, and the OVA gave a little insight into that and a little insight into just how the characters dealt with settling in the situation at that time. Now, unfortunately, I do believe some of the voice actors have changed. So if you were used to the English dubbed voice actors, then, you know, as you might expect for something that's dubbed so much later than the original series, some of it's different. And maybe that's not too bad of a thing, because, I mean, I've realized rewatching the couple episodes I did that I've always felt like there's some things about the Elfinly dub that are good, but some things that kind of feel off, maybe a little awkward. Really hard to tell, because sometimes the series itself likes to be a little awkward. Maybe I should watch it in Japanese with English subtitles. It's probably a lot more consistent that way. Oh well. So, other than that, the only other thing I've watched are the first 6 episodes of Little Busters. You know, since the Blu-ray version did arrive, and it arrived... Well, when did it arrive? Maybe last week. Probably on Wednesday. I probably said it was going to show up then. And... well, so far... it's hard to say what I think about it. It's got interesting characters in it. Some interesting character interactions happening. It feels like it's a little forced together, but it kind of occurs to me that Clannad kind of somewhat feels like that. And that forcedness mostly comes from the way both series start, where with... I mean, I can admit that Clannad, especially Clannad After Story, was more emotionally intense, but I generally liked Canon a lot more just for its more consistent story. Like, you kind of... It feels like it has more of a flow and a purpose to it than Clannad, which kind of meanders a bit and doesn't seem to do a whole lot. And it's relevant all in Clannad, but even if the anime doesn't explain too well why that is. But basically, it's Clannad and Little Busters seems to start the same way, where, okay, here are these guys there in their normal life, and then all of a sudden something relevant happens. Whereas Canon kind of is like, instead of all of a sudden something relevant happens, that something relevant happening is pretty much a major change to the main character's life, where he's moving back into a town he hasn't been in a long time, and he doesn't remember it all that well. So there's an element of canon where it's like, okay, you understand why that's a relevant story, whereas Clannad and Canon, the main characters start meeting new characters, and they have their established relations, but it feels like it's hard to understand why it happened right then and there. At least Little Busters, well, I have to rewatch Clannad to properly compare, but Little Busters is doing something to kind of make that notable, but it's very strange. It's kind of like an issue where it feels like the anime was literally created that day, and those characters were created with those problems right then. So, like, even the main friend's cat-loving character in his childhood friend group, you know, she doesn't really socialize with a lot of people, and it's only all of a sudden now that people are trying to do something about that. And it's kind of related to how Little Busters is set up, but it's also... it kind of feels like she was created right then and there to have that problem for them to overcome. You know, it's a fairly strange feeling. And thus far, 6 episodes in, it has dealt with one of its story arcs, and I think if it's going to be like previous key works, then most likely they'll be touching little stories, maybe sometimes bordering a little bit on silly, depending on, you know, how some of the cheesy factor wears off on you. But ultimately, it's the overall story as it slowly develops, which eventually will come to the head, that's the thing that you'd probably be more interested in. So Little Buster's been okay, but it's not replacing canon in terms of my favorite storytelling, and thus far, it's not replacing Clannad in terms of the most emotionally intense. Yeah. So, I guess that's pretty much it. In terms of stuff coming out, I can't think of anything notable. I mean, this is December, and there's a lot of Aniplex and... just a lot of Aniplex releases this month. I think Blue Exorcism, Vivid Dread Operations, and probably also Fate Zero Set 2. And maybe even more than that I'm not remembering. And I think that all happens around the same time. So, there's that. But the good news is, Sunday, my current plan is to watch a third Poila Magi Madoka Magica movie in a local theater. So, I might be able to talk about that next week. We'll have to really see, because... well, at a minimum, I'll be able to say what my overall feelings were, right? And, all that aside, I guess I can't think of anything else in particular to talk about. It's probably a bit more than I needed to, so y'all have a nice week.